Imagine checking into a hotel where a young woman vanished, and the last thing anyone saw was her acting strangely in an elevator. Tonight, you'll hear that story, and 3 others that will make you question what's really out there in the dark. You know, there's a reason I've always been suspicious of certain old hotels. Some buildings just have an energy that feels wrong, and in downtown Los Angeles, there's one place that stands as the king of bad vibes, the Cecil Hotel. Now, this isn't just any hotel. It's been around since the 1920s, seen the Great Depression, and sheltered thousands of people, some down on their luck, others downright dangerous. The Cecil has been home to murderers, suicides, and people who just vanish. And in 2013, it became the center of one of the strangest, most unsettling cases I've ever followed, the death of a young woman named Elisa Lam. Elisa was 21, Canadian, a college student from Vancouver who loved to travel and share her adventures online. She was bright, cheerful, but also open about her struggles with mental health. She decided to take a solo trip through California, and Los Angeles was one of her stops. She checked into the Cecil Hotel, big mistake if you ask me. By this point, the hotel was partly operating as a low-income residence, and the other half was open to tourists who probably didn't know the kind of history the building had. The area around it, Skid Row, not exactly the place you'd want to wander alone at night, but Elisa was adventurous. She explored the city, posted photos, and wrote blog updates. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. On February 1st, Elisa disappeared. Just gone? Her parents called the police when she missed check-in with them, and the LAPD started searching. A few days later, the hotel released surveillance footage from the elevator. I'll be honest with you, it's one of the creepiest videos I've ever seen. Elisa steps inside the elevator like she's hiding from someone. She presses multiple buttons, peeks out into the hallway, ducks back in. Her hands move in strange, almost unnatural ways, some people say. It looks like she is talking to someone who isn't there. And the weirdest part, the elevator doors just don't close. She steps out of view, and eventually, the doors shut as if nothing happened. That video went viral. Everyone had a theory. Was she high? Was someone chasing her? Was it paranormal? The internet became obsessed. 2 weeks after she vanished, hotel guests started complaining about low water pressure and a strange taste in the tap water. Maintenance workers went to check the rooftop water tanks, and that's when they found her. Elisa's body was floating inside one of the tanks. The hatch was closed. Now, here's where it gets strange. Access to that rooftop required passing through locked doors with alarms. The tanks themselves were heavy and difficult to climb into. The official autopsy: no drugs, no alcohol. They ruled it an accidental drowning, blaming it on her bipolar disorder. But that never sat right with me. How did she get onto the roof without triggering alarms? How did she open the tank lid by herself and close it again from the inside? And if this was just a mental health crisis, why did so many details feel like something or someone else was involved? Some people think she was murdered. Others believe she was having a psychotic episode and somehow made it to the tank on her own. But then, there are the people who dig deeper into the Cecil's history, how serial killers, like Richard Ramirez, stayed there. How guests would jump to their deaths from the windows. How the buildings seemed to attract tragedy like a magnet. I've even heard theories about the elevator game, a creepy ritual from Asia that supposedly opens a door to another dimension. Sounds crazy, right? But when you watch Elisa in that video, pressing those buttons in sequence and moving like she's interacting with something invisible, it makes you wonder. I have followed this case for years, and I can't shake the feeling that the Cecil isn't just another old building. It's almost like the place itself feeds on people. Elisa Lam's story, isn't just about one girl lit, it's about a hotel that has been swallowing lives for nearly a century. And if you think this was just a tragic accident, ask yourself this: why is it that after all these years, with all the cameras, all the technology, and all the investigators, we still don't have a clear answer? Sometimes, the scariest stories aren't the ones with ghosts or monsters. They're the ones where the truth is right there, and no one can see it. So, after we've gone through the chilling mystery of Elisa Lam and the Cecil Hotel, I want to take you into another story, one that's just as disturbing, but rooted in cold-blooded murder and the kind of haunting that grips an entire nation. This is the Amityville Horror. You know, there are some houses where you can just feel something is wrong the moment you step inside. The air feels heavier. The silence doesn't feel empty, it feels like it's listening. And in the quiet suburbs of Amityville, New York, there's one house that carries a darkness so deep, people are still terrified to even walk past it. The story begins in November of 1974, inside a large Dutch colonial home on 112 Ocean Avenue. The DeFeo family lived there: Ronald Sr., his wife Louise, and their 4 children. On the night of November 13th, their eldest son, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr., took a rifle and murdered his entire family while they slept, one by one. The strange part? All 6 victims were found lying face down in their beds. No signs of a struggle, no one got up, no one tried to run. How does that happen? Neighbors didn't hear gunshots, and Butch's story about what happened kept changing. He was convicted of the murders, but that wasn't the end of the nightmare. About a year later, the house went back on the market. You'd think no one would want it, but George and Kathy Lutz saw it as their dream home. Big, beautiful, and at a bargain price. Sure, they knew about the murders, but they didn't believe in ghosts. They moved in with Kathy's 3 kids in December 1975. That was when things started happening. At first, it was small stuff, strange smells, sudden cold spots, doors locking on their own. Then it escalated. Green slime oozed from the walls. Swarms of flies appeared in the middle of winter. George began waking up at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night, the exact time the DeFeo murders happened. One day a priest came to bless the house. As he sprinkled holy water in one of the bedrooms, he heard a deep, menacing voice say, "Get out." He left and told the Lutzes never to sleep in that room again. The family endured only 28 days in that house before fleeing, leaving all their belongings behind. They never went back. They claimed they'd been terrorized by forces they couldn't explain, doors slamming, voices whispering, invisible hands touching them. George said he woke one night to see his wife levitating above the bed. Their youngest child claimed to see a demonic pig with glowing red eyes watching her from the window. People called them liars. Others swore they were telling the truth. But when investigators came in, they found evidence that chilled even seasoned paranormal researchers. Skeptics say the Lutz family made the whole thing up to get out of a bad mortgage deal. Believers say the evil that drove Butch DeFeo to murder his family never left the house. And here's the thing, I've looked into the details. And even if half of what the Lutzes claimed was exaggerated, there's still too much that lines up. The priest's testimony, the unexplained photos, the patterns of time, the lingering feeling people still get when they step inside. Sometimes a place doesn't just remember what happened, there it replays it, over and over, until someone new gets caught in the loop. So, after the shadows of the Cecil Hotel and the horror of Amityville, you might be wondering, do these kinds of hauntings only happen in the city, or in tragic houses? Well, the next story will prove that even the quiet, open farmlands of the American South aren't safe. And it's a haunting that's been told for over 2 centuries. The legend of the Bell Witch. So, we've been to the dark hallways of the Cecil Hotel, and we've stood inside the cursed walls of the Amityville house. But let me take you somewhere different now, far from the cities. Away from crowded streets, out into the quiet Tennessee countryside. And yet, what happened there is one of the most terrifying hauntings ever recorded in American history. This is the Bell Witch. When most people think about the countryside, they imagine peace-rolling fields, fresh air, neighbors who wave as they pass by. But in the early 1800s, on a farm near the Red River in Robertson County, Tennessee, the Bell family learned that peace can vanish overnight, replaced by a fear you can't see, touch, or escape. It began in 1817. John Bell, a respected farmer, noticed strange animals on his property, creatures that shouldn't have been there. A large black dog with glowing eyes, a bird bigger than any he'd seen before. At first, he shrugged it off. But soon, knocks began on the walls of the Bell home. Scratching noises under the floor, whispers in the dark. Then it escalated. Whatever it was didn't just make noise, it spoke. A voice, first weak, then growing stronger, called itself Kate. It claimed to be the spirit of a woman who had lived nearby and held a grudge against John Bell. The spirit didn't just talk, it sang, quoted scripture, and carried on full conversations. And it didn't stop at words. It physically attacked the Bell family. Betsy Bell, John's daughter, was slapped, pinched, her hair pulled. Neighbors witnessed it. People came from miles away to see for themselves. Even General Andrew Jackson, yes, that Andrew Jackson, who would later become president, visited the farm and reportedly fled after a night of terrifying experiences. The haunting went on for years, and John Bell's health began to fail. On December 20th, 1820, he was found unresponsive. Next to his bed was a vial of strange black liquid. When the family confronted the spirit, Kate laughed and claimed she had poisoned him. John Bell's funeral was held, and Kate even spoke during the ceremony, mocking the family. Then, as suddenly as it began, the attacks stopped, or so people thought. The Bell Witch said she would return in 7 years, and according to the Bell family, she did, though less violently. Even now, the legend endures. The Bell Witch Cave, near the old farm, has become a place where visitors claim to hear whispers, see shadows, and feel invisible hands touch them. Now, here's my take. The Bell Witch isn't just some campfire story. Too many people witnessed it, ordinary folks, soldiers, even a future president. This wasn't one frightened family's imagination. Something was there, something intelligent, and it chose the Bells to make a point. But here's what keeps me up at night. The Bell Witch promised to return someday for good, and when it does, who's to say it won't pick someone new? We've gone from a cursed hotel, to a murderous house, to a haunted farm. But the last story I have for you tonight is different. It's not about a ghost you can see, or a demon you can name. It's about a killer who walked among people in the daylight, someone who taunted an entire city and promised death to anyone who didn't follow his rules. This is the story of the Axeman of New Orleans. So far, we've explored a haunted hotel, a cursed house, and a vengeful spirit in the countryside. But this last story, this isn't about a ghost. This is about a living, breathing monster who walked the streets, chose his victims, and sent an entire city into a panic. This is the true story of the Axeman of New Orleans. You know, most killers hide in the shadows, trying not to be noticed. They leave clues behind without meaning to. They run when things get hot. But the Axeman, he wasn't just a murderer, he was a showman. And in 1918 and 1919, he turned New Orleans into his stage. The first attacks happened in May 1918. Joseph and Catherine Maggio were sleeping in their home when someone broke in, cut their throats with a straight razor, and then almost theatrically smashed their skulls with an axe. The killer left the weapon behind, wiped clean. Nothing was stolen. The only thing missing was peace. At first, police thought it was a robbery gone wrong, but then it happened again and again. The victims had something in common. They were mostly Italian grocers and their families. The Axeman would break in at night, use their own axe or razor against them, and leave without being caught. People locked their doors, bolted their windows, and still, he got in. The city was gripped by fear. And here's the thing that gets me back then. There were no security cameras, no DNA tests. If you wanted to be a phantom, you could and the Axeman was the perfect phantom. Then, in March 1919, something unbelievable happened. The local newspaper received a letter, allegedly from the Axeman himself. And it wasn't just a threat, it was pure theater. He claimed to be a demon from the hottest hell and promised to kill again on a specific night. But he gave the city one way to save themselves. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing. At the time I have mentioned, if everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. Can you imagine that? A killer giving the city a condition to survive, and the condition is to play jazz. That night, New Orleans came alive. Every club, every bar, every home had jazz blaring. People danced in their living rooms, not because they were celebrating, but because they were terrified. The Axeman didn't kill anyone that night. To me, that says one of two things. Either he really was watching, enjoying the chaos he caused, or someone else was doing the killing and used the letter to feed the legend. But the killings didn't stop. Victims kept turning up sometimes, surviving the attacks long enough to give vague descriptions of a tall, shadowy man in a dark suit, but no one ever identified him. By late 1919, the attacks just stopped. No arrest, no trial. The Axeman vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. Now, here's what I think. The Axeman might not have been one person. Maybe it was a string of copycats, all killing in the same style to keep the city terrified. Or maybe it was one man who enjoyed the game so much that once it stopped being fun, he simply walked away. But here's the thing, New Orleans never forgot him. His legend became part of the city's dark folklore. Even now, more than a century later, people still tell his story over the sound of jazz. And every time I hear those brassy notes echoing through the French Quarter late at night, I can't help but wonder if somewhere, in the shadows, he's still listening. Asterisk, asterisk. So, we've traveled through some of the darkest corners of American history tonight. We walked the haunted hallways of the Cecil Hotel, where Elisa Lam's final moments remain frozen in grainy elevator footage, forever unanswered. We stepped into the cursed walls of the Amityville house, where murder left a scar that no family could escape. We stood on a Tennessee farm and listened to the voice of the Bell Witch, a spirit so real that even a future president fled from her wrath. And we wandered the midnight streets of New Orleans, following the Axeman, a killer who made an entire city dance for their lives. Different places, different times, different horrors. But here's what I want you to remember. In each of these stories, the scariest thing isn't just the blood, the ghosts, or the legends, it's the fact that they could happen again. The hotel still stands, the house is still there, the cave is still open. And in New Orleans, jazz still echoes through the night. Evil doesn't always die. Sometimes it waits, quietly, until someone new walks into the wrong place, at the wrong time. And maybe, just maybe one day, someone will be telling your story. Asterisk, asterisk. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You survived all 4 stories at least. For now. But before you go, I want to hear from you. Out of everything we've explored tonight, the Cecil Hotel, the Amityville haunting, the Bell Witch, or the Axeman of New Orleans, which one sent the biggest chill down your spine? Drop your answer in the comments, because I am curious to see if we all agree on what is truly the most terrifying. And hey, if you enjoy walking these dark paths with me, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, there are even darker stories waiting for us.